All right, let's dive in to a big story. And in fact, it is one that has dominated many of the conversations on our social media channels since last week. And this is the story regarding Toronto influencer Sasha Exeter and her claims that stylist Jessica Mulroney threatened her. And then subsequently, Sasha calling her out on her white privilege. So the story is this, in case you have not followed it. Last week, Sasha Exeter explained that she put out a general call to action on her social media channels, saying that people with a platform should be speaking out against injustices right now and supporting the Black Lives Matter movement in particular. Well, then she says that Mulroney sent her threatening messages saying she had complained to brands about Exeter's that Exeter works with, and then subsequently putting Exeter's, livelihood in jeopardy. Mulroney has since apologized, calling this a disagreement, and Chu, unfortunately, a few moments later, then sent a private message to Sasha claiming that she would sue her for libel. Multiple companies, as a result of what had happened last week, have now severed ties with Jessica Mulroney, including CTV. Huge story, certainly hits very close to home. Ladies, what's your reaction to this?
Yeah, it hits real close to home because Sasha is my niece. But I will be very clear that this is her story. This isn't my story. But when it comes to this younger generation, and if anybody comes to me for advice, or oftentimes I just reach out, I will tell them to do what I didn't do. 30 years in this industry, and I didn't see a lot of myself as a Black woman in television, in a newsroom for most of my career. And so I felt that I had to tread very, very carefully. There's so many times I didn't speak out. And in hindsight, I think I should have. But I didn't want to be troublesome. I didn't want to be perceived as a troublemaker because I was Black. I never felt that I could make any mistakes. So the whole idea that somebody can actually be threatening, bullying, and feel there are no consequences is something we really, really have to think about. I now tell any young person to speak out, not to hold it inside, because white privilege is insidious. You know, it operates and it's allowed to grow because people don't speak out. People don't call it what it is. And those times are over. There are consequences now.
Marcy, you just mentioned that white privilege is insidious, and it's insidious even in the way that people covered this story. This was a case of white privilege and aggression, and in the media, in many outlets, it was characterized as a, quote, dispute or a disagreement, which is how Jessica Mulroney characterized it. There's an article in Refinery 29 that talks about how this is another layer of white privilege, that when someone like Sasha Exeter, who is Black, has the proof of what happened to her, that she was threatened, and she puts the proof out there, the media, certain members of the media, still call it a disagreement instead of naming what this is. That also is white privilege in service of the white woman, Jessica Mulroney. So yes, Marcy, definitely insidious.
I think there are a lot of people, including some of our viewers, who see this as an example of someone getting canceled unfairly as just being bullied. And I think they're framing it in a fundamentally different way than I am. Not only are they framing Jess as the victim rather than Sasha, which has more layers than a wedding cake, but they're also framing this as an example of cancel culture, when I see it as an example of the culture of accountability, which we are living in right now. And Jess has been, she's being held accountable for threatening the livelihood of Sasha, which was an abuse of privilege and power. And to be clear, I don't think Jess sat back and thought, you know what? I'm going to capitalize on my privilege and power right now. That's not how it works. When abuse of privilege and power goes unchecked, as you were saying, Marcy, for so long, and then it is called out, you do get defensive, you get confused. it sorry to say this, but it kind of reminds me of Richard II, a man who became king through the divine rights of kings and who lived through a moment where suddenly the divine rights of kings no longer exist. And he sits in that prison cell, unable to understand and comprehend how it could happen that he is no longer king. Where did it all go? And I also feel, if I can add this, I don't think any of us, I shouldn't speak for anyone else. I am not reveling in the consequences that Jess is facing right now. They're rotten, but the consequences, and I think this is key, are not Sasha's fault. Consequences are a result of personal actions and choices, and the person who must take responsibility for them is the person who created them. But first, they have to acknowledge them, and we might have to wait some time before we see that.
We've been talking so much about allyship and how do you go beyond lip service in saying you're an ally and then showing that you're an ally. And what we are now learning is that your actions speak far louder than your words. In other words, those two must be congruous. We're learning with this situation that you cannot say one line of beliefs, but behave in completely the opposite manner of beliefs. The other part of privilege and allyship is if you do have privilege, and we all do to some extent, I certainly do, then the onus is not just in calling out the big companies and corporations and saying, what are you doing for the fight? What are you doing for equality? The hardest part for me in all of this is the closer it is to home, the more discomfort arises. But that is what allyship should be. It shouldn't be easy. The fact is, I am so uncomfortable sitting here and talking about this. And if I'm perfectly honest, I'm really scared too. I'm scared because this is within our circle of work or friendship for some people. And it has caused utter chaos. But the fear that I have in speaking out and calling Jessica's actions what they were, which was an abuse of power, is nothing compared to, I'm sure, the fear that Sasha was experiencing in going through this and deciding to speak out against a perceived very powerful person. But this discomfort that I'm sitting with, I'm just letting myself realize if you don't call out people within your own circle that you can influence and maybe change for the better, then I'm a hypocrite. So silence is violence. I won't stay quiet about whose side I see through, and I stand with Sasha. Let me make that unequivocally clear. And I, as an ally and as a person with privilege, it is incumbent on me to call out the people closest to me in order to make a change. Otherwise, we got no shot of changing anything.
I love that you use the word discomfort, Mel, and I've been feeling a lot of feelings too, and then sitting with the fact that I think it's a good thing that I'm sitting with discomfort. From what I'm hearing from my Black friends is that they often move through the world feeling a lot of discomfort. And I think that right now is an exercise for people of privilege, particularly those with white privilege, to feel some of that discomfort on many levels. I mean, obviously, I think it goes without saying, I can't help but think if Sasha didn't come forward with her story in the way that she did, what would have happened to Sasha's career? And then I think, how many other Sashas have there been beforehand who have been threatened or even simply felt threatened by the situation that they were in and didn't come forward to tell their side of the story, and they were simply quietly canceled by a person who had more power and privilege. And it makes me think also and turn the lens on myself about where in my life I may have been putting out things and been blind to what I was putting out. I think it's very easy to overlook the impact of your words. It's easy to overlook your own privilege as well. It's also very easy to become preoccupied with your own story and the way that you see the world and putting yourself in the center of things. And without realizing the impact of all of those things that they can have on other people, particularly marginalized people. And I think if there's one thing that I very much want to sit with and I want people to think about is that intent does not negate impact. And And I think we all really need to start to lead more, particularly people of power and privilege, lead more with empathy. It's just a starting point, and it's a tiny thing. But I hope anybody listening thinks that way.
Yeah, and Sin, I completely agree. And empathy is not a tiny thing. Empathy is what is going to bring about change in this world because it's allyship. Here's the thing I talked about, Sasha being able to speak out, this younger generation doing what I couldn't do or wouldn't do, because it's scary, right? It's scary if you stand alone. But the thing that's different right now is that they're not alone. And whether this was a Sasha Exeter or a Kayla Gray or a Brandon Gonez or anybody else, it is important for people to know that there's an army behind them, that they're not alone. So times have changed.
Mm-hmm.